The wind howled across the Montana plains, carrying the scent of dust and freedom, but it couldn't drown out the panic clawing at my chest. I was 28, broke, and standing at the edge of a ranch I'd never seen before, my duffel bag slung over one shoulder, my life unraveling faster than a poorly tied knot. This job, mucking stalls, fixing fences, was my last shot at keeping my head above water, but the moment I saw her, I knew I was in deeper than I'd planned. Her name was Riley Kane, the Cowgirl Foreman of Blackthorn Ranch, and she strode toward me like she owned the earth itself. 32, with a lean frame hardened by years of wrangling cattle, she had green eyes that cut through you like a summer storm. Her cowboy hat tipped low, casting a shadow over a face that was all sharp angles and quiet intensity. "You must be Ellie Harper," she said, her voice low and steady, like she was sizing me up for more than just the job. I nodded, my throat dry, already feeling the weight of her gaze. I'd come here to work, to escape the mess of my past, but Riley's presence felt like a challenge I wasn't ready for. The ranch sprawled across 1,000 acres of rolling hills, framed by the jagged peaks of the Rockies. It was late August, the air thick with the promise of an early fall, and I'd arrived just as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of fire. Riley led me to the bunkhouse, her boots kicking up dust with every step. "You ever worked a ranch before?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. I shook my head, admitting I was a city girl from Chicago, running from a failed relationship and a mountain of debt. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. "City girls don't last out here," she said. "Prove me wrong." The bunkhouse was a creaky wooden building, smelling of pine and leather. My cot was narrow, the mattress thin, but it was mine. As I unpacked my few belongings, a worn journal, a photo of my mom, a pair of boots I'd bought secondhand, Riley lingered at the door. "Work starts at dawn," she said. "Don't be late." But there was something in her tone, a flicker of curiosity, that made my pulse quicken. I told myself it was nerves, nothing more. I couldn't afford distractions, not when I was barely holding myself together. The next morning, I woke to the sound of roosters and the distant lowing of cattle. The ranch was alive, a symphony of hoofbeats and shouted commands. Riley was already out there, barking orders to a crew of weathered ranch hands, all men who eyed me like I was a stray dog. "New girl," one of them muttered, spitting tobacco into the dirt. Riley shot him a look that could have stopped a stampede. "She's here to work, same as you," she said, her voice ablade. I felt a strange warmth at her defense, but I pushed it down. I had to focus, on the job, on surviving. The day was brutal. My hands blistered as I hauled hay bales, my back ached from shoveling manure, and the sun burned my skin despite the long sleeves I wore. Riley was everywhere, checking fences, guiding horses, her movements precise and effortless. She caught me struggling with a coil of barbed wire and stepped in, her hands steady as she showed me how to twist it without slicing my fingers. "Slow down," she said, her breath warm against my cheek. "You'll get the hang of it." Her touch lingered a moment too long, and I froze, my heart hammering. I told myself it was nothing, but the way her eyes held mine said otherwise. By nightfall, I was bone-tired, collapsing onto my cot with barely enough energy to eat the stew served in the mess hall. The other hands kept their distance, their conversations laced with crude jokes and sidelong glances. I was an outsider, and they made sure I knew it. But Riley sat across from me, her plate untouched, her gaze steady. "Why'd you come here, Ellie?" she asked, her voice soft but probing. I hesitated, the truth too raw to share. A broken engagement to a woman who'd left me for someone better, a job I'd lost to corporate cuts, a life I'd burned to the ground. I needed a fresh start, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, like she understood more than I'd said. That night, I lay awake, staring at the bunkhouse ceiling, the creak of wood and the distant howl of coyotes filling the silence. Riley's face kept flashing in my mind, those eyes, that half-smile, the way she moved like she was part of the land itself. I'd sworn off love after Sarah, my ex, shattered my trust. But something about Riley felt dangerous, like a spark too close to dry grass. I didn't know then that she was hiding her own scars, ones that would unravel us both. The days blurred into a rhythm of sweat and grit. I learned to saddle a horse, to mend a fence, to read the sky for signs of rain. Riley was a hard teacher, pushing me to keep up, but there was a warmth in her corrections, a patience that made me want to prove myself. One evening, as we rode out to check a herd of cattle, the sky turned a deep violet, the stars sharp as glass. "You're doing better than I expected," Riley said, her horse sidestepping mine. "Most city girls would have quit by now." I laughed, the sound surprising me. "Maybe I'm not most city girls," I shot back. Her smile was slow, deliberate, and it sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with the cooling air. But the ranch wasn't all open skies and quiet moments. Tension simmered among the hands, especially with a man named Cole, a burly ranch hand with a temper as short as a fuse. He didn't like me, didn't like that Riley gave me attention. "You don't belong here," he sneered one day, cornering me near the barn. Before I could respond, Riley was there, her voice like steel. "Back off, Cole," she said, stepping between us. He glared but retreated, and I saw something in Riley's eyes. Fear. Not for herself, but for me. That was the first time I realized she cared, and it scared me more than Cole's threats. The days stretched into weeks, and Blackthorn Ranch became both my refuge and my crucible. The work was relentless. Sunrise to sunset. My body ached in ways I didn't know it could, but I was starting to feel the land in my bones, the way the earth breathed under my feet. Riley was the pulse of it all, her presence a constant pull. Like gravity, I couldn't escape. One morning, as I struggled to wrangle a stubborn calf during branding, Riley's hand brushed mine, steadying me. "Easy," she murmured, her voice low, meant only for me. My breath caught, and I fumbled, the calf nearly slipping free. The other hand snickered, but Riley's glare silenced them. "Keep your eyes on the job," she said, but her tone softened when she looked at me. "You're getting there." I wanted to believe she meant more than just the work, but I didn't dare hope. Hope had burned me before. The ranch hand's resentment grew sharper, like a blade honed by repetition. Cole was the worst, his comments laced with venom. "City girl thinks she's one of us now," he muttered one evening in the mess hall, loud enough for everyone to hear. I kept my head down, focusing on my plate, but Riley's fork clattered against her dish. "She's pulling her weight," she said, her voice a warning. Cole smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Sure, boss. Whatever you say." The air crackled with unspoken challenges, and I felt the weight of every eye on me. That night, unable to sleep, I slipped outside, the cool air a balm against my racing thoughts. The stars were endless, a canvas of light above the dark silhouette of the barn. I heard boots crunching on gravel and turned to see Riley, her hat off, her hair catching the moonlight. "Can't sleep?" she asked, stopping a few feet away. I shook my head, my voice stuck somewhere deep. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "You don't have to prove anything to them, Ellie. Just to yourself." Her words hit harder than they should have, stirring something I'd buried after Sarah's betrayal. We started talking, really talking, for the first time. Riley told me about growing up on the ranch, the only child of a father who drank too much and a mother who left when she was 10. "This place is all I've got," she said, her voice raw. "It's who I am." I told her about Chicago, about Sarah, about the way love had felt like a trap I'd barely escaped. "I don't trust easy anymore," I admitted. Riley nodded, her gaze distant. "Me neither," she said, and I wondered what ghosts haunted her. The next day, a storm rolled in, dark clouds swallowing the sun. We scrambled to move the herd to higher ground, the rain lashing us like a whip. Riley was a force, shouting orders, her hat plastered to her head. I rode beside her, my horse skittish, my hands trembling on the reins. When a calf broke from the herd, darting toward a swollen creek, I spurred my horse after it without thinking. The water was fast, too fast, and my horse stumbled, throwing me into the mud. I heard Riley shout my name, her voice sharp with panic. She was there in seconds, hauling me up, her hands gripping my arms. "You okay?" she demanded, her eyes wild. I nodded, shivering, my clothes soaked through. She didn't let go, her touch anchoring me as the rain poured down. For a moment, the world was just us, the storm fading to a dull roar. "Don't do that again," she said, her voice breaking. I wanted to ask what she meant. Don't risk myself, or don't make her care. But the moment passed, and we rode back in silence. Back at the ranch, the hands were gathered in the barn, drying off. Cole's eyes narrowed as Riley handed me a blanket, her hand lingering on my shoulder. "Getting cozy, huh?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Riley stiffened, but before she could respond, I snapped, "Mind your own business, Cole." The barn went quiet, the tension thick enough to choke on. Riley's lips twitched, a flicker of pride in her eyes, but I saw something else too, worry. That night, Riley found me by the corral, where I was watching the horses settle under the clearing sky. "You stood up to him," she said, leaning against the fence. "Not many do." I shrugged, my heart pounding. "I'm tired of being pushed around." She looked at me, her gaze steady, and for a moment, I thought she might say something more. Instead, she tipped her hat and walked away, leaving me with the weight of what wasn't said. The next morning, Riley assigned me to ride with her to check the northern fences, just the two of us. The air was crisp, the ground still damp from the storm. We rode in companionable silence, the rhythm of the horses' hooves a steady beat. "You ever think about leaving?" I asked, breaking the quiet. She glanced at me, her expression unreadable. "This ranch is my home," she said. "But sometimes, yeah, I think about it." Her voice held a longing I hadn't expected, and I wondered what dreams she'd buried to stay here. As we reached the fence line, we dismounted, working side by side to repair a broken post. Our hands brushed, and I felt that spark again, sharper this time. Riley paused, her eyes meeting mine, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might lean closer. But a shout from the distance broke the moment. Cole, riding up with a scowl. "Trouble at the main gate," he said, his tone clipped. "Boss wants you back." Riley nodded, but her jaw tightened, and I knew whatever was building between us would have to wait. The trouble at the main gate was a broken lock, rusted from the storm and forced open by someone, or something. Riley's face was grim as she inspected it, her fingers tracing the jagged metal. "This wasn't an accident," she muttered, her eyes scanning the horizon. The ranch hands whispered about rustlers, a problem that had plagued Blackthorn before, but Riley's silence told me she suspected something worse. We rode back to the ranch house, the tension between us now layered with unease. The owner, Mr. Hargrove, a grizzled man in his 60s, was waiting, his face like thunder. "We lost 10 head last night," he growled. "Riley, you're supposed to keep this place tight." Her jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. I saw the weight she carried, the way the ranch's troubles rested on her shoulders. "I'll handle it," she said, her voice steady despite the storm in her eyes. That night, Riley gathered the hands for a meeting in the barn. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and distrust. "We're doubling patrols," she said, her tone leaving no room for debate. "Ellie, you're with me on the night shift." My stomach flipped, both at the thought of riding with her and the danger lurking in the dark. Cole's sneer was unmistakable, but he said nothing, his eyes burning holes into me. The night patrol was cold, the Montana sky a blanket of stars. Riley and I rode the perimeter, our horses' breaths visible in the chill. "You don't have to do this," she said suddenly, her voice low. "It's not your fight." I shook my head, gripping the reins. "I'm here, aren't I? I'm not running." She looked at me, her expression softening, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in her. a crack in the armor she wore so well. We didn't talk much after that, but the silence felt different, charged with something unspoken. As we neared the northern fence, Riley's horse froze, ears pricked. She raised a hand, signaling me to stop. In the distance, a faint rustle broke the quiet, then the sharp crack of a branch. Riley's hand went to the rifle strapped to her saddle, her eyes narrowing. "Stay close," she whispered. My heart pounded, but I nodded, following her as we crept forward. The rustlers were there, 3 shadowed figures cutting wire, their movements quick and practiced. Riley didn't hesitate. "Hey," she shouted, her voice slicing through the night. The figures froze, then bolted, disappearing into the brush. Riley spurred her horse after them, and I followed, adrenaline burning through me. We lost them in the dark, but not before Riley spotted a brand on one of the stolen cattle, a mark that wasn't blackthorns. Back at the ranch, Riley reported to Hargrove, her face pale with anger. "It's the McCall outfit," she said. "They've been sniffing around our land for months." Hargrove cursed, slamming his fist on the table. "We can't prove it," he said. "Not yet." Riley's eyes met mine, a silent promise that this wasn't over. I felt a surge of loyalty, not just to the ranch, but to her. The next day, the ranch buzzed with tension. The hands were on edge, and Cole's attitude grew uglier. He cornered me by the stables, his breath hot with whiskey. "You're bad luck, city girl," he spat. "Ever since you showed up, things have gone to hell." I stood my ground, my fists clenched. "Maybe you're the problem, Cole," I shot back. He stepped closer, his bulk looming, but Riley appeared, her presence like a storm breaking. "Enough," she said, her voice deadly calm. Cole backed off, but his eyes promised trouble. That evening, Riley found me by the creek, where I'd gone to clear my head. The water was clear, reflecting the fading light. "You don't let him get to you," she said, sitting beside me. "He's all bark." I laughed, bitter. "Feels like more than that." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "You're stronger than you think, Ellie. I see it." Her words hit me hard, stirring something I wasn't ready to name. We sat there, the silence stretching, until she spoke again. "I've been alone a long time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This place, it takes everything." I looked at her, seeing the weight of years in her eyes. Years of fighting, of holding the ranch together, of hiding who she was. "You don't have to be alone," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Her gaze locked on mine, and for a moment, I thought she might kiss me. But she stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. "We've got work to do," she said, her voice rough, and I knew she was running from whatever was growing between us. The next morning, Riley and I rode out to scout the McCall border, looking for evidence of the rustlers. The land was wilder here, the grass tall and untamed. We found tracks, boot prints, hoof marks, and a piece of wire cut clean, just like at Blackthorn. Riley's face was grim, but her hand brushed mine as we crouched to examine the tracks, and I felt that spark again, brighter now. "We're gonna stop them," she said, her voice fierce. "Together." I nodded, my heart racing, not just for the fight ahead, but for her. The plan to catch the rustlers was risky, but Riley was relentless. She and Hargrove devised a trap, move a small herd to the northern pasture, bait the thieves, and catch them in the act. I volunteered to join the night watch, ignoring the knot in my stomach. Riley tried to talk me out of it, her eyes dark with worry. "This isn't your fight, Ellie," she said again, but I shook my head. "It's ours," I said, and the look she gave me, half pride, half fear, made my chest ache. We set up before dusk, hiding in the brush near the pasture. The air was heavy, the sky bruised with clouds. Riley crouched beside me, her rifle ready, her body tense but steady. "If this goes south, you run," she whispered. I wanted to argue, but her hand on my arm silenced me. Her touch was warm, grounding, and I realized how much I'd come to rely on her presence. The rustlers came just after midnight, their shadows moving like ghosts. There were 4 this time, cutting wire with practiced ease. Riley signaled to the other hands, and we sprang the trap, shouting and firing warning shots into the air. The rustlers scattered, but one turned, raising a gun. Riley tackled me to the ground as a shot rang out, her body shielding mine. For a moment, all I could hear was her breathing, ragged and close. "You okay?" she gasped. I nodded, my hands clutching her jacket, my heart pounding not just from fear. We caught one of the rustlers, a young man who spilled everything under Hargrove's glare. The McCall outfit was behind it, just as Riley suspected, driven by greed and a feud older than either of us. Hargrove called the sheriff, and by dawn, the ranch was buzzing with deputies and paperwork. Riley was quiet, her face drawn, and I knew the victory didn't feel like one. "This'll start a war," she said later, as we sat by the corral. "McCall won't let this go." I reached for her hand, tentative, and she didn't pull away. "We'll face it together," I said, echoing her words. The ranch settled into an uneasy calm, but the tension with Cole boiled over. He blamed me for the trouble, claiming I'd distracted Riley, made her soft. During a heated argument in the barn, he shoved me against a stall, his face twisted with rage. "You don't belong here," he snarled. Before I could react, Riley was there, yanking him back. "Touch her again and you're gone," she said, her voice low and lethal. Cole stormed off, but his parting glare promised retribution. That night, Riley found me by the bunkhouse, her hat in her hands, her guard down. "I'm sorry about Cole," she said. "He's always been trouble." I shook my head. "It's not your fault." She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "I don't want you getting hurt, Ellie. Not because of me." Her voice cracked, and I saw the fear she'd been hiding, not just for the ranch, but for what we were becoming. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. She nodded, her lips parting like she wanted to say more, but she just squeezed my hand and walked away. The next day, we rode out to repair the northern fence, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Riley was quieter than usual, her movements deliberate. As we worked, she told me about her first love, a girl from town who'd left when her family found out. "I learned to keep things buried," she said, her voice raw. "It's safer that way." I stopped, my hammer poised over a nail. "It's not safer," I said. "It's just lonelier." Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw her walls start to crumble. We finished the fence as the sun set, the sky a blaze of orange and pink. Riley leaned against a post, her hat tipped back, her face soft in the fading light. "You make me want things I shouldn't," she said, her voice barely audible. My heart stopped, but before I could respond, a shout from the ranch broke the moment. Cole was back, drunk and furious, accusing Riley of betraying the ranch by playing favorites. The other hands watched, silent, as Riley faced him down. "You're done here," she said, her voice cold. Cole lunged, but the other hands held him back, and Hargrove fired him on the spot. That night, I found Riley by the creek, her shoulders slumped. "I'm tired, Ellie," she admitted. "Tired of fighting, of hiding." I sat beside her, our knees brushing. "You don't have to hide from me," I said. She looked at me, her eyes bright with unshed tears, and for the first time, I saw the woman behind the foreman, vulnerable, fierce, and beautiful. I reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. Cole's departure left a void, but the ranch didn't slow down. The McCall feud escalated, with reports of their men scouting our borders. Riley was on edge, her eyes scanning the horizon like a hawk. I wanted to ease her burden, but every time I got close, she'd pull back, her fear of vulnerability stronger than her desire to let me in. One morning, as we rode out to check the herd, Riley stopped her horse, her gaze fixed on a distant ridge. "They're watching us," she said, her voice tight. I followed her line of sight, but saw nothing. How do you know? I asked. She pointed to a glint of light, binoculars catching the sun. My stomach twisted, but Riley's calm steadied me.
We keep working, she said.
We don't show fear. That afternoon, Hargrove called a meeting. The sheriff had no hard evidence against McCall, and the wrestling continued. We're moving the herd closer to the ranch, he said. Riley, you're in charge. She nodded, but I saw the strain in her eyes. Later, as we mucked stalls, I tried to lighten the mood. Ever think about running away to a beach somewhere? I asked, half joking. She laughed, a rare sound that warmed me. Maybe, she said, but I'd miss this place too much. Her eyes met mine, and I saw the truth. She'd never leave, not unless she had a reason stronger than the ranch. That night, we sat by a fire outside the bunkhouse, the other hands swapping stories. Riley was quiet, her gaze distant. When the others drifted off, I stayed, the crackle of flames filling the silence. You okay? I asked. She sighed, rubbing her hands together. I've spent my life protecting this place, she said. But sometimes I wonder what I'm missing. I leaned closer, my voice soft. You're not missing this, I said, gesturing to the space between us. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, I thought she'd kiss me. But she stood, muttering about checking the horses, and I let her go, my heart heavy. The next day, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the eastern pasture, the flames spreading fast in the dry grass. We scrambled to contain it, Riley shouting orders as we beat back the blaze with blankets and shovels. The herd stampeded, and I saw Riley ride into the chaos, her hat flying off as she herded the cattle to safety. I followed, my lungs burning, my eyes stinging from smoke. When the fire was finally out, we collapsed in the dirt, exhausted but alive. Riley's face was streaked with soot, her eyes fierce. You didn't have to do that, she said, her voice hoarse. I wanted to, I replied, and her hand found mine, squeezing tight. The fire was no accident. Traces of gasoline pointed to McCall's men, a warning shot in their escalating war. Hargrove was furious, vowing to take it to court, but Riley's focus was on the ranch. We can't let them win, she said, her voice steel. I nodded, but my mind was on her, on the way she'd risked everything, on the way her hand had felt in mine. That evening, Riley asked me to ride with her to the creek, just the two of us. The moon was full, casting silver light over the water. I've been running from this, she said, her voice trembling. From you. My heart stopped, but I stayed quiet, letting her speak. I loved someone once, she said. She left because I couldn't be what she needed. I swore I'd never let anyone in again. She looked at me, her eyes raw. But you're different, Ellie. You see me. I reached for her, my hand cupping her cheek. I see you, I whispered, and I'm not going anywhere. She kissed me then, fierce and desperate, her lips tasting of smoke and salt. It was everything I'd been afraid to want, everything I told myself I couldn't have. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine, her breath shaky. This scares me, she admitted. I smiled, my heart full. Me too, I said. But we'll figure it out. The moment was broken by a shout, Hargrove calling for Riley. McCall's men had been spotted near the ranch house. Riley's face hardened, and she grabbed her rifle. Stay here, she said, but I shook my head. I'm coming with you, I said, and she didn't argue. We rode back, the night alive with danger, but I felt stronger with her beside me. The confrontation with McCall's men was a blur of shouts and hoofbeats. They'd cut the fence again, scattering a dozen cattle before vanishing into the night. Riley was furious, her hands shaking as she repaired the wire by lantern light. They're trying to break us, she said, her voice tight. I touched her shoulder, grounding her. They won't, I said. We're stronger than that. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world felt steady again. Back at the ranch, Hargrove was on the phone with the sheriff, demanding action. The hands were restless, their trust in Riley strained by the constant attacks. I saw the toll it took on her, the way she carried every loss like a personal failure. That night, I found her in the barn, brushing down her horse, her movements mechanical. "You can't carry this alone," I said, stepping close. She didn't look at me, but her voice was raw. "I don't know how to let go," she said. I took the brush from her hand, setting it aside. "Let me help," I said, and she leaned into me, her head resting against my shoulder. The next day, Riley and I rode to town to meet with the sheriff. The evidence was mounting: tracks, wire cutters, even a stolen branding iron. But McCall's influence ran deep, and the sheriff warned us to tread carefully. On the ride back, Riley was quiet, her jaw tight. "I've spent my life fighting for this place," she said finally. "But I'm starting to wonder if it's worth it." I reached for her hand, squeezing it. "It's worth it because it's yours," I said. "And I'm here with you." Her smile was small, but it was enough. The ranch hands began to warm to me, their skepticism fading as I proved myself. Even Hargrove noticed, clapping me on the shoulder one day. "You're not half bad, city girl," he said. But Cole's absence left a shadow, and rumors spread that he joined McCall's crew, fueling their attacks. Riley didn't say it, but I knew she felt betrayed. Cole had been with the ranch for years, and his defection cut deep. One evening, as we sat by the creek, Riley opened up about her past. Her father's drinking had driven her to the ranch, where Hargrove became a surrogate father. "He gave me a purpose," she said. "But he also taught me to keep people at a distance." I traced her knuckles with my thumb, my heart aching for her. "You don't have to keep me away," I said. She kissed me, slow and deliberate, and I felt the walls between us crumbling. The next morning, disaster struck again. A barn caught fire, the flames licking the sky before we could stop them. We saved the horses, but the structure was a loss, along with half our winter feed. Riley was devastated, her face pale as she surveyed the damage. "This was Cole," she said, her voice hollow. "I know it." I wanted to comfort her, but the ranch was in chaos, and we spent the day salvaging what we could. That night, Riley and I sat on the porch of the ranch house, the air heavy with smoke and defeat. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she said, her voice breaking. I took her hand, my heart racing. "You're not alone," I said. "We'll rebuild. Together." She looked at me, her eyes searching, and I saw the moment she decided to trust me. She pulled me close, her lips finding mine, and for the first time, I felt like we could face anything. But the fight wasn't over. The next day, a letter arrived from McCall, offering to buy Blackthorn at a fraction of its worth. Hargrove tore it up, cursing, but Riley's face was grim. "They're closing in," she said. "We need a plan." We spent hours strategizing, rallying the hands, fortifying the ranch. I saw Riley in a new light, not just as a foreman, but as a leader, fierce and unbreakable. And I knew I'd follow her anywhere. The final stand came faster than we expected. McCall's men struck at dawn, a coordinated attack on the main herd. Riley and I were already out, patrolling, when we heard the gunshots. We rode hard, the wind whipping our faces, and found the hands fighting off a dozen armed men. Riley didn't hesitate, diving into the fray, her rifle steady. I followed, my heart in my throat, wielding a borrowed shotgun with more bravado than skill. The battle was chaos, cattle stampeding, shouts echoing, dust choking the air. I saw Cole among the attackers, his face twisted with rage. Riley spotted him too, and for a moment, I thought she'd falter. But she didn't. She fired a warning shot, shouting for him to stand down. He didn't listen, charging her with a knife. I acted on instinct, tackling him to the ground, my hands shaking as I pinned him. The sheriff's deputies arrived just in time, cuffing Cole and the others, ending the fight. In the aftermath, The ranch was battered, but standing. Hargrove thanked us, his gruff voice thick with emotion. "You saved this place," he said to Riley, then looked at me. "Both of you." Riley's hand found mine, her grip fierce, and I knew we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. That evening, we sat by the creek, the water reflecting the stars. Riley was quiet, her hat resting on her knee. "I was ready to give up," she admitted. "But you made me want to fight." I smiled, my heart full. "You gave me a reason to stay," I said. She kissed me, soft and sure, and I knew this was where I belonged. Not just the ranch, but with her. The next day, Hargrove offered me a permanent job and Riley a raise. We rebuilt the barn, stronger this time, with the hands working as a team. The McCall feud didn't vanish, but the sheriff's arrests weakened their hold, and Blackthorn stood tall. Riley and I grew closer, our love a quiet strength that anchored us. We faced whispers from the hands, judgment from town, but we faced it together, unashamed. Months later, as winter blanketed the ranch, Riley and I stood on the porch, watching snow dust the hills. "I never thought I'd have this," she said, her arm around me. "A home, a partner." I leaned into her, my breath visible in the cold. "You're my home," I said. She smiled, her eyes bright, and I knew we'd build a life here, one day at a time, rooted in love and resilience. The ranch taught me more than how to ride or rope. It taught me to fight for what matters, to love without fear. Riley and I weren't just survivors. We were builders, carving out a place where we could be ourselves. And as the Montana skies stretched endless above us, I knew we'd face whatever came next together.